for more on the status of that case and what we can learn from it, I want to bring in Todd Bensman now. He's a senior national security fellow at the Center for Immigration Studies and the author of the book Overrun: How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in U.S. History. Todd, good to have you back with us, sir.
Great to be here. Thank you.
Tell it first. Would you give us a rundown of who CD Mohammed Abdullahi is and what took place in October?
Sure. What we know about him, which is not a lot, we know a lot more about the New Orleans attacker in one day than we know about CD in 2 months.
Yes.
But we know that he crossed the U.S. southern border from Mexico in March of 2023.
Mm-hmm.
And he's from Mauritania, 22 years old. We've had a lot of Mauritanians come into the country over the border, close to 20,000 of them as of the end of 2023. A very popular trip for Mauritanians. So he makes his way to Chicago, as some 50,000 illegal immigrants have. Once they're released, he gets released right away with an order to appear before ICE. Millions of people have gotten that. A year and a half later, he conducts this terror attack, a very well-planned jihadi attack on an Orthodox neighborhood. Shoots an Orthodox Jewish man in the back, for starters. Gun jams, disappears. Cops come out to respond to 911 calls.
Mm-hmm.
And when they come out, he attacks them, trying to up his body count. Big gun battle goes on for a long time. He's moving in and out. He's got some kind of tactical understanding about how to bob and weave. He's taking pot shots at neighbors, but ultimately, and he's shooting at firefighter paramedics who are trying to load his first victim into the ambulance, who survived, and trying to kill him as well and them. Shoots a bunch of holes in the ambulance. And then finally, the police shoot him down and wound him. And the state of Illinois, not the FBI, oddly, charges him with terrorism under the state terrorism statute. Probably the first time that's ever been used. He gets arraigned initially in November, and around November 30, he hangs himself in jail. There's been very little, so there's not going to be a trial. There's been very little media coverage beyond the big turns of the screw on this case.
Mm-hmm.
But he does, it's a significant terror attack in my view, because this is a scenario that the intelligence community and FBI Director Christopher Wray have been warning us about for many, many months now, that people crossing the border from countries of terrorism interest might pop off here inside the country, especially if they're mad about Gaza and the war in Gaza, which apparently this individual was. They found all kinds of pro-Hamas, anti-Israel, anti-Semitic jihad propaganda on his cell phone. He was wearing a yellow vest, reflective vest, which is what all the pro-Hamas demonstrators around the world are wearing.
Mm-hmm.
It was a terror attack, according to the state of Illinois.
Yes.
And it's the first one of its kind, and seems to me like we should be thinking a lot about this.
Yes.
Trying to learn what we can from it so that we don't have another one.
So he's from Mauritania, which is a country in Africa. It's not connected by land to the United States. Mauritania, I don't know a lot about Mauritania, but I do know that the concerns about terrorism and even slavery within Mauritania are very high. He comes across our southwest border, and the Biden administration just releases him into the country?
Yes, because remember that there is a protocol. I mean, most people probably don't know this, that when the numbers are normal that are coming across, when somebody comes in from a country like Mauritania, they get tagged with the label special interest alien, which is basically puts them into secondary inspection by intelligence officers or FBI agents to try to figure out what they're all about. They do eyeball to eyeball interviews and go through their pocket trash. But during the Biden administration, so many were coming in from those countries that the system was completely overwhelmed and they just let everybody through. And it looks like this Mauritanian and probably all the Mauritanians, the 20,000 of them that have come over the border, probably were just waved through. There's no possible way they could have done interviews with that many to try to figure out what they're about. You know, are you predisposed? Do you have the virus? Who are you and what does your pocket trash tell us? And how can our intelligence allies overseas help us learn more about you, et cetera? None of that has been happening for the last 4 years because there are just too many. And I think that's what happened here. They waved them through. Maybe they did a fingerprint check and ran them through the databases and didn't find anything, which doesn't mean anything at all. That's pretty shallow. And, a year and a half later, he's shooting up a neighborhood, people cowering in their homes with their children and pets.
Yes.
Shell casings littering the streets, and a Jewish guy bleeding in the street, and him bleeding in the street too eventually.
So how dangerous, how big is the threat in your view, Todd Bensman, right now of more terror threats like this?
I go with the intelligence community threat assessment. So DHS every year puts out a public threat assessment. It's the intelligence community's collective belief in what the top threats are. The 2024 and the new one from 2025 both warn about terrorists crossing the southern border and what that means. And FBI Director Christopher Wray on numerous occasions in the last year has been in front of Congress warning that the southern border and what's coming in from the other side
yes.
are a major terrorism threat. And I regard those guys as my betters, and I believe what they have to say there.
But, well, I have a low regard for Christopher Wray, but I do hear, I have heard him say that on a routine basis, which leads me to wonder the following thing, Todd Bensman. If that's the case, why are they allowing it to happen? So normally, what we see happen with terrorist attacks in the United States, terrorist attack takes place, and then the United States government infringes the civil liberties of law-abiding Americans as a way to redress the terror attack. Rather than if you're saying all the alarms are going off, all the lights are blinking about our southern border, why aren't they locking down the southern border? Why are they aiding and abetting all of this foreign migration into the United States?
Because that national security measure conflicts with the other agenda of the White House, the Biden White House, which is to let everybody in, to get as many people in as possible, to manage the border, to do nothing to block up and cause congestion at the border. In other words, get them all through as quickly as possible, regardless of public safety or national security concerns. And so I don't believe that they ever wanted to do the right thing down there at the border with people coming from Muslim majority countries. And they didn't. And in fact, even after this Chicago terror, named a terror attack, charged as a terror attack by the state, ever really got FBI attention. The FBI, you could see, absolutely took over the case in New Orleans. We just saw that. They took over the case in Las Vegas. They always take over.
A little bit of disruption to this call. All right.
Presidential election.
Yep.
You didn't see the FBI anywhere near that thing. And to this day, you haven't seen them anywhere near that case.
Yeah,
I've got
you broke
calls
up,
out
Todd.
to
You
the
broke up a little bit there, but to your point, you saw the FBI crawl all over these terror cases in New Orleans, in Vegas, but because this attack took place just before the presidential election, I think you just said, and you didn't see
Yes,
the FBI anywhere near it.
that's right. I think that the public safety duty conflicted with this political agenda at the time.
Yeah.
Just before the presidential election, you had Trump out there on the stump. Now, Trump did mention the Chicago attack in his final North Carolina rally.
Mm-hmm.
He talked about it, but nobody ever quoted it. Nobody has ever quoted that, or really, it received very little national attention at all. Nobody knocked on any doors. I decided to go to Chicago because he hanged himself, and now there's not going to be a trial that would illuminate a lot of the unanswered questions.
Yes. I hate when the phone. Yeah. Hey, I'm sorry. Hey, Todd. For some reason your phone keeps breaking up, unfortunately. But this is, this is so important. And so in other words, the FBI is operating in a political way ahead of the election. So therefore, it doesn't place public safety as its highest priority. Instead, it was about preventing any sort of political damage to Kamala Harris.
I think that's what happened with this particular case. And then in the aftermath of the election, people kind of moved on because Trump had won, and
right.
It was sort of distracting. But it's never too late to go back. Now we've got a deportation program about to start up in Chicago. Tom Homan is saying, "I'm going to Chicago on day one, and I'm going to force this down your throat."
Right.
Because Chicago's saying, we're not going to participate in deporting anybody from this city. We're going to block you at every possible way. And this is like after this big terror attack by an immigrant.
Yes. So what do you make of that impulse by these lefties? It's not what their people want, I would presume. I've seen all of these alderman meetings, these people keep showing up, residents of Chicago, black, white, and every other color, and saying, "Hey, I don't want this for my community. Get control of this." Why would Chicago continue to fight for illegals, fight to be a sanctuary city? Why wouldn't they fight for the interests of the voters?
Well, if the media and public officials were more emphatic about this terror attack that just happened, carried out by one of these illegal immigrants, an actual terror attack on Jews in Chicago, on the whole community, it freaked them all out, sent shockwaves through that entire Orthodox community that to this day they're scared. Maybe they'd be a little less reluctant to participate in deportation operations. This is a good thing for Chicago, and to my dying day, I'll never understand why any elected official would block the removal of criminal aliens and terrorists from their community. Who would leave them in your community and flick them on your own people? Who would do that?
No,
I'll never understand it.
That's right. Well, you'd have to hate your own community to take that position, and I worry that so many of them do. I hate that, but it's true. Todd Bensman from the Center for Immigration Studies, thank you for constantly digging in on this subject. Happy New Year. Great to have you with us today.